So we're going to start at the request. This is what you're doing pre-trip. You're going to fill out this request to get permission to go. And someone there in the department, maybe Drew, tell me how y'all are using the request. Are y'all using this to generate an encumbrance, or are y'all just doing it to get permission to go on a trip?
Just to get permission.
Okay. So that's how we'll do this request. So here I am on the home page. So you know you're going out to SSO and you're logging in, clicking on Concur, and this is your home page. So we're going to hover over this tile labeled New, and our first option there is Start a Request. Okay. Now this screen, if you're talking to us and we say the request header, this is the screen we're talking about, okay? Request header, this is the first tab that you're going to come to. Anytime you're going through Concur, if you see a field with a red bar, it has to be populated. It can't be left blank. So you've got to have something in it before you can advance. So for today, we're going to call this our 12-11 demo. And I'm going to push this trip pretty far out into the future. We're going to go in June. And then we're going to come back just the very next day. And then we get to our travel classification. Okay, this really depends on who's traveling. So I'm an employee. I'm going to be traveling in-state. So I would end up selecting employee in-state. Okay, if you're traveling out of state, it's going to be employee out of state, foreign employee foreign. If you're bringing in a guest, so maybe y'all are bringing in some participants or prospective employees or a guest speaker or something like that, you have those options available to you. So I'm going to select employee in state. And then this next field, I'm going to further define that just a little bit. So yes, I'm an employee. Am I faculty? Am I traveling with students? Am I staff? In my case, I'm staff. So I'm going to select staff here. If I had selected a student traveler type in the previous field, I'd be required to put in a value in this field depending on the type of travel. Contracts and grants. This is always going to be no, but let me kind of explain why the field is in there in the first place. It's a shared site, Concur is, so all the system members within the A&M system use it. There are a couple of system members that use this field to drive some custom workflow. So we can't get rid of it, but what we've done for the system members that don't use the field is we've defaulted this value to no. Okay, if you try to change it to yes, the system's going to tell you you need to change it back to no. Okay, so pretend that field isn't here. It doesn't apply to you, but everyone always asks, well, if it doesn't apply to us, why is that field there? It's there to satisfy the needs of a couple of those other system members. So trip purpose and benefit. This is a state requirement. So it's a state rule where we have to say where we're going, why we're going there, and how Texas A&M benefits from paying for this trip. Okay, so what I'm going to put in here is going to be fairly generic. I'm going to say to attend a Concur conference and present research. And generate grant funding. Okay, so there's a benefit. Now that's real generic, okay? Y'all are going to be a little bit more specific than that, but you don't need a long drawn out narrative of why you're going. You know, kind of what the state's guidelines are is they ought to be able to pull someone off the street, show them this expense report, and have them understand why you're going on this trip and what the benefit of it was, okay? Now the rest of these fields on the top portion, the personal travel included, that's a yes or no. This is kind of up to your department. Does your department want to know if you're extending the trip for a personal vacation? That's allowable. Some departments want to know about it, some don't. Okay, so I'm not sure if y'all are using this field or not. If you're bringing in a participant, prospective employee, sending a student somewhere, you can put their name here. So even though I'm submitting this request, my approval chain will know that it's really for this person, okay? And then your notes field is there just in case there's anything additional that you want to let one of your approvers know. So that's a free text field. You can put in whatever you want there. Foreign travel. So currently, if you're going on a foreign trip, you have to acknowledge whether the country you're going to is under a State Department travel warning or not. That's what this field is for. We have a link on the Concur homepage out to the State Department's website that lists out those travel warning countries. So you would want to check that. And if it is under a warning, you're going to select the second option. If it's not, you're going to select the first. Now this is probably going to change here pretty soon. We're going to go to System Risk Management's list of high-risk countries. Okay, so this field is probably going to go away. But I'm just not sure when. So once you've done that, you've got to populate the foreign country that you're going to. Okay, so just like any other list in Concur, if you start typing here, so let's just say we're going to Canada. As I start typing, Concur is going to filter down the list for me. Okay. Now I mentioned that second list. That second list is programmed into these foreign country fields. Okay, so if you select a country in one of these fields that's on System Risk Management's list of high-risk countries, they're going to get added to your approval workflow, and you're going to get a little pop-up in Concur with a link to System Risk Management's questionnaire. Now it asks a bunch of questions about, you know, how are you traveling? What type of security are you going to have? Are you going to have an escort? All things like that. Questions about that form should be sent to System Risk Management. Okay, so I've programmed in the link that displays for you, but the form itself and any questions surrounding that need to address those to System Risk Management. But once you've done that form, you want to save it. I'd save it as a PDF, and then you would attach it to your request, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. Okay, so since y'all are not generating encumbrances, you do not have to have an account number on your header, okay? If you have an account number here and your estimated expenses are going to be greater than 0, then that's going to cause an encumbrance to be generated on that account. Okay, so if y'all aren't doing encumbrances, go ahead and delete out this account. Okay. Any questions about the request header itself before we move on?
Kyle,
Yes.
we're not encumbering on any particular account, but we are asking them to list their expenses.
Yeah, that's fine. And we'll cover that on the next screen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this screen is done. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And then that's going to take me to the estimated expenses. Okay, so this is where you can put in your estimates. Now, some departments just choose one expense type and they put in the entire trip cost that they think it's going to be. Other departments, they want it broken out. What's your airfare going to be? What's your hotel going to be? What are your meals going to be? Okay, so that's entirely up to you how you want to see that submitted. I'm just going to choose meals here, and I'm going to put in $100. And then I'm going to choose car rental, and I'll put in $150. Okay, so it's really, really easy to enter your estimated expenses. Okay, so now when I submit this report, I'm telling my approver, hey, I'm going on a one-day trip. I think I'm going to spend $250, but since I don't have an account on the header, it's not going to generate an encumbrance. Is that how y'all are using Request?
Yes, Kyle, and we do want to clarify that we are itemizing.
Okay, so this is how you would want to do it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, any questions about that?
I actually do have a question. If you
Sure.
itemize, but you don't include an itemized section in the request, we haven't encumbered any funds yet, and you end up like, say, needing to, do a car, a parking fee or something like that, is that allowable? Can you add an encumbrance that, a itemization that you haven't included in here?
Can you add it to the request, or can you add it to the expense report?
Can you add it to the expense report?
Yes, so your request is always just an estimate, okay? And like I mentioned, some departments just choose one expense type. So if you say you're gonna spend $250 and all you have here is meals and car rental, but when you show up, to the hotel or something, it's a valet parking only. So you have to pay for the valet and you have to give the valet a tip. Yeah, you add that to your expense report. That's a valid expense. But you weren't aware of that when you did your request. Okay, so we don't really compare the amount that you requested versus what you're expensing. Okay, so the request is really for department use. How do you want to see it? Do you want to know how much is being expensed? Technically, and this is the way a lot of requests are submitted, they're submitted with $0. Okay, so if I delete these out, this is how a majority of requests are submitted. So most departments are using this just to get permission to go. They're not even asking their travelers how much they're going to spend. Okay, so the request option is fairly flexible depending on how your department wants to use it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right.
So
Go ahead.
sorry. If we are if we have grants where we do have specific travel funds set aside for, if we're not putting the account in the header because we don't want them encumbered, how do we make note of that in the request that this is actually coming off of a grant fund and not our main Sea Grant fund?
You could put it in a notes field. That shows up as a comment that's viewable by your approver.
Okay. Thank you.
So back on the header, you could just say, will be expensed.
Or you can put a description of the project as well.
I mean, you could put in something like that. Okay. So I had mentioned when we were talking about the system risk management questionnaire that once you fill that out, you're going to want to save it as a PDF. And then you want to click attachments and then click attach documents. And then you're just going to browse to wherever you saved that file and you'll upload it. So you'll click upload and then close. And then every approver down the line is going to be able to look at that attachment so that when it gets to System Risk Management's office, they'll be able to look at that attachment, see all your answers, and they might be sending you questions back and forth. Hey, can you give me more detail on, what type of security you're going to be using? Okay, something like that. The next tab is approval flow. Now, your approval flow is already defined. Your business office has set that up in Famous. So there's always going to be some type of base approval flow that's going to be applied to your report. Now, if you want to add additional people to it, you can, and that's what these buttons here do. So if I hover over it, it tells me if I click that button, I'm going to add a workflow step before this one. So let's click it. And then I get this box that's labeled User Added Approver. Okay, that's someone I'm going to manually add here. So I can search by last name, UIN, or email. And then just choose from the list who you want it to go to. Okay.
Can I interrupt?
So I'm now, go ahead.
I just wanted to let the extension staff know that if they can start adding Cindy in the approval flow for the request. Because when they come directly to me, I don't know if their travel has been approved. This way Cindy will see it firsthand and she can approve or deny.
Question about that. Does that mean
Oh,
Cindy
just
would
extension
be,
staff.
I mean, yeah, but for me, it would be Sarah. So our supervisor would be request approver, and then would you be cost object approver?
Oh, you don't even have to add me, it goes directly to me
Oh, okay.
as the business.
Okay.
Yeah, so just real quick on the screen, the way y'all are using request, y'all are always going to be using cost object approval, and that's what y'all have set up in Famous, okay? Cost object approval is just Concur's term for the Famous e-offices. Excuse me. Okay, any questions about approval workflow? All right. So just to make the approval process easier on this demo, I'm going to delete this one out. Okay. So at this point, we filled out the header, we've estimated expenses, we've done an attachment, and we've made any modifications necessary to our workflow. So we're ready to submit, okay? How many of y'all's staff and faculty there are using delegates to create these requests and create expense reports? Do you know?
Everyone
Are most
creates
people using delegates? What's that?
Everyone creates their own request and expense reports.
Okay. So then, yeah, your screen will look exactly like mine. You'll be ready to submit the request. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and submit it. And then this right here, that's my electronic signature. And then this has gone off to my approver. So she just received an email from Concur letting her know that she had a request to approve. So I'm going to sign out, and I'm going to go in as our approver. Now she's going to have two options on how she wants to do this approval. She can either go to the Concur mobile app, which she can just load on her phone and approve my request there, or she can log into SSO and come to her home screen and do the approval from here. So really the mobile app is easiest. I'm not sure how many of y'all have used the mobile app, but it really is good. It's a lot more intuitive than the web interface, a lot less navigating and clicking. It's very easy to figure out where you're supposed to be going. But if she does come into SSO, she's going to see right here that she's got 5 required approvals. So we're going to click there, and then we see she's got 5 requests.
Kyle,
And then there's, yes.
so TripIt is the app?
Well, TripIt is one of the apps, but it's specific to just your travel reservations. What I was referring to was Concur Mobile, which is kind of the Concur product. It's got your request, your booking tool, your expense reports, and then Expenseit all built into it. So what Expenseit does, if you're not aware, this is the main benefit of the mobile app, using Expenseit. You get a hotel receipt. You open up your Concur mobile app, hit the camera button within the app, and take a picture of that receipt. That sends it on to Concur's OCR server, and they're actually reading that receipt and determining, you know, who's the vendor. Based on that vendor, they're saying, hey, when we've seen this vendor in the past, what expense type has it been? So if it sees Marriott, it's going to call it a hotel. And then it's going to start reading the expense line items on that. And it's going to see your nightly rate, your tax, your parking, your internet. It's going to break all that down for you and go ahead and itemize it on your expense report. Okay, so it's doing all that for you. All you have to do is tell it which report it belongs to. You're not having to manually do anything there. Same thing with meals, same thing with car rental. You just take a picture of it and Concur creates the expense for you. And if you're using the travel card, it's gonna hold on to that expense and look for a matching travel card transaction. It's gonna marry those two together, and you just slide it onto a report. Okay, so if you're using your travel card in Concur Mobile, 95% of the work is done for you. You don't have to do anything. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like when we get to the expense report side, but yeah, it's really convenient. Do y'all have people using the mobile app? If you don't, I would highly suggest they give it a try on their next trip. It's awesome. But anyway, back to requests. So here's the 1211 demo request that we just created. So I'm going to open that up. And as the approver, I can view the header. I can view when they're traveling, why they're traveling. That note that we entered shows up right up here. So when I said it's going to be expensed to this account, this is where it shows up. I can look at the expense summary. Oh yeah, we deleted all the expenses. But if there were expenses here, I had 150 on there, I could have opened up that car rental and said, well, I'm only going to approve 75 of this. Okay, so the approver can write down the amount that's requested. The approver can also edit the approval flow tab. So if I come in here and I see, hey, somebody else should have approved this, I can come in here and add additional approval steps. Okay, very, very simple. If there were attachments on this document, I could look at the attachments. And then I've got the option to send it back. And if I use that option, I'm required to put in a comment as to why. So we could say, there's not enough money on this account. I can't have you out of the office on this date, something like that. Okay, you can put in whatever you want. Or I can go ahead and hit approve. But before I do that, are there any questions about approving an expense report?
Kyle,
Yes.
if the travel request came directly to me and I wanted to add Cindy, would it go to her and then back to me?
No. So you can add, when you're an approver, you can add steps that come after you. So you'll approve it, and then it's going to go to those steps that you added.
Okay, so once I see it, it's
Okay.
just move on to the
Yeah,
next.
so where we are right now, we're on this request approver step, and you'll notice that there's no button to add a step before that one. So everything, it goes from top to bottom. Okay, so I can always add steps after me.
Okay, thank
Is
you.
there a need for that? Is there a need for it to come back to you?
No, because really it should go to Cindy before me.
Okay.
So the requester just needs to add the approval in there.
Is every single one of your requests going to route to Cindy first?
Just extension, certain staff,
Okay. Is it certain department codes or just certain staff?
certain staff.
Okay. I was trying to find a way to automate that, but the workflow is specific to the department that owns the accounts being used, not by individual. So unfortunately, there's not a way to automate that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and approve this one. Oh, wonderful. Well, that's going to work. I am in a test site, so hopefully the production site is not getting that error. All right, let's go back in as our traveler. Now, y'all tell me, I had not planned on showing the booking tool. I'd planned on moving straight into the expense report. Is that what y'all want to see?
Sure.
Go ahead and do the
Yes,
booking.
yes, Kyle, please. The booking.
Show the booking? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So the booking tool, it's sitting here on the home page over here on the left. First thing you're going to do is select your funding source, okay? The vast majority of our travel is done on local funds. The only difference between local and federal is federal has the Fly America Act built into it, okay? So if you choose, or when you're searching for flights, you're going to see whether they're Fly America Act compliant, okay? That's the only difference. Most people go ahead and select their local funding source anyway, because sometimes they're not sure what account is going to pay for it, but they need to go ahead and book the trip, okay? But you've got to do that first.
Kyle,
Yes.
can you explain the importance of using the Book It?
Using the what?
Book It? Is that what you called
Book
it?
it?
Booking?
Oh, you mean the app?
Yes.
The TripIt app?
No, the booking that you're showing, the importance of going through here, through the Concur system.
Well, it's preferred that we go through here simply because you have a support system in place. When you're booking through Concur, you're booking through our program using our travel agent. If something goes wrong on your trip, you call our travel agent. We have a direct line to them. They will rebook you. They will find you a hotel, rental car, whatever you need. So like if there's a flight cancellation, you're not going up to the American counter. You're not calling American's 800 number and sitting on hold for an hour. You're calling our travel agent and they take care of everything for you. You also get our contract rates. Okay, so we have airfare contracts with American, United, and Southwest. So we get discounts off their regularly published rates that you would find on their website. The same rates you find there, you're going to get cheaper in Concur, at least for American and United. Southwest is kind of iffy. They have some tight specifications as to, we're going to give you a discount on this specific fare, okay? And so when you're going through Concur, it might be discounted, it might not, but you are going to get some extra miles out of it. That's what Southwest is offering. But with American, you're going to get priority boarding, and you're going to get an upgraded seat. I think they call it a preferred seat. So it's not like the premium economy, but it's a seat towards the front of the plane. Okay, and you're not going to be like the last person to board. You're not going to be stuck in the back, and your fare is going to be cheaper. Okay, so you're going to save money going through Concur. Now, if you're comparison shopping and you find something cheaper, I need to know about it because that's a problem and we need to address it. Car rentals. All of our car rental contracts are loaded in here. So Hertz, Enterprise, National, Avis, all those are loaded in here. They're marked preferred. If you rent from one of those 4 vendors through Concur, you're going to get our contract rate, which includes the insurance coverage. Okay, so that's your CDW, LDW, and liability. Now, risk management says if you rent off contract, so a non-contract rental car, you need to accept those insurance coverages. And sometimes that can almost double your cost for the car. So chances are our contracts are going to be cheaper and you're going to have the necessary insurance coverage that you need. Now, one thing I'll say on that is that it only applies to domestic rentals. So if you're going to a foreign country, those contracts do not apply. And the advice is for you to accept all the insurance coverage, okay? But that is the point of booking through Concur for the traveler's benefit, okay? There's support there, there's cheaper rates, and you're getting contract rates. Now, kind of a secondary benefit of that is the more we can funnel through Concur, the better data we have to go back to these vendors and say, hey, you know, we had this many flight segments with you last year. How about throwing in free baggage? Or how about free internet at the hotels, free parking, something like that. All that data they want out of Concur. When we have people pay out of pocket, we kind of see what they spent, but there's a lot of data in the background, like the flight segment data and all that stuff that the airlines are looking for that we simply cannot get unless the bookings are going through Concur or CTP. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
If we have contract numbers, or we've had those in the past with like Hertz or Enterprise, and we use
Uh-huh.
that? Is that,
Is that allowed? Yeah, it is. You can still go directly to these vendors as long as you've got the contract number. So yeah, there's no problem doing that. And the numbers have not changed in years. So you probably
so
still
we
got
can,
them.
we can decline the insurance, right?
Well, you should decline it, but before you decline it, just ensure that they've applied the contract to your rental.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
And also, you mentioned that, there's a travel agency and travel support. Is there specific information that I can say save in my phone for that? Or, there we go.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Right here. And they do have after hours. The after hours agents, they're not CTP employees. They are a third party. And anytime you call that after hours number, it's going to be a $16 charge. So just be sure you're calling this number first if it's within business hours. Also, if you book through here, you'll receive an itinerary from CTP that'll have their contact information. And if you're using the TripIt app, their contact information will be synced into your app as well. Okay, so there's multiple ways to save their contact information. All right, let's go ahead and set up our search. So we're going to fly from.
I have a
Go ahead,
question
sorry.
about the funding source.
Uh-huh.
I was told that we have to do, it's federal, like it's always federal. Is that correct for Sea Grant, or
No, it's local for us.
local, like us as all of Sea Grant, or us as in College Station employees?
Sea Grant,
It should always be local?
yes.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get back to the search. We're going to go from College Station, and we're going to go to DFW. We were leaving on June 16th, so I'm going to leave fairly early in the morning. So I'm going to choose 6 a.m. and then plus or minus 2 hours. And then
Hey,
we're going
Kyle?
to come back to, huh?
I'm sorry, I was muted and I was unable to talk right after Kate had asked her question. This is Pam, and I was told by several people the same information that Kate just shared, and that is because most of us are traveling on Sea Grant funds, and because our Sea Grant funds are federal funds, that we are supposed to select federal, not local. So can you weigh in here? Because Priscilla's saying local, I've been told federal by multiple sources.
Honestly, I'm not that familiar with your fund setup. I can look at a particular account or a department that owns a particular account and tell you whether it's state, local, or federal. But as far as making a general statement on all your funds, no, I really couldn't speak intelligently to that because I don't know
Right.
where all your.
What I'm telling you as the director of this program is that our travel funds come from our federal grant. There are a few exceptions when staff have their own grants that may not be federal funds, but most of our travel is on federal funds.
Okay, so as a general rule, if your money's coming from a federal grant, it has to follow Fly America Act, which would mean you use federal in your funding source.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to come back the very next day. I'm going to choose a late afternoon flight and then plus or minus 2 hours. we are going to pick up a car when we get to Dallas, and we want to find a hotel. And just to narrow my search down a little bit, I'm going to search for Marriott hotels. Okay, the search comes up by default. It's going to search within a 5-mile radius of the city that you land in. Okay, so if you want to change it, you can change it. I can change this to Fort Worth if that's where I'm going, Grapevine, you know, wherever you happen to be going, you can change that. You can put in a landmark. They use the Statue of Liberty as their example there. So you can put in pretty much whatever you want. I think the search tool actually uses Bing search. So whatever's on Bing, you can search by. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our search. And let's talk a little bit about what it's searching. Okay, so it's a system called the GDS, which stands for Global Distribution System. This is a system that all the travel vendors use to put all their inventory in. Okay, so occasionally you might find some select fares that an airline might hold back for sale on their own website, but by and large, that's going to be a rare occasion. So like I said earlier, if you're comparison shopping on United.com and you see the same flight in Concur and it's not cheaper, please grab a screenshot and let me know, because it means we're not getting the content that we're supposed to be getting. Okay. All right, so here's our flights. I said I wanted to leave around 6 a.m., so here's a 6:15 flight. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And then for my return flight, I said I wanted to leave around 5, so here's a 4:55 flight. I'll go ahead and select that. And now that I've selected both flights, Concur says, hey, American, here's our 2 flights. What's my round trip cost going to be? Okay, so here's my options. I can get it for $484.49, or I can get it for $1757.20. Okay, these are different fares. This is a flexible fare, which means it says non-refundable here, but usually you can get a refund minus some sort of a fee. You can do changes on it, etc. This one, if you cancel it, you're just going to get a credit with American. But this is typically what most travelers purchase, these non-refundable fares. So that's what I'm going to use. So it's confirming my departure and return. In my profile, I had added in my American Airlines frequent flyer number. Okay, so it pulled that in from my profile. I can select a seat here if I want to, but the airlines are getting a lot more restrictive on what seats that they load into the GDS. They really want to charge you some additional fees or force you to have some kind of status on their airlines in order to reserve a seat. I imagine some of y'all are fairly frequent flyers. You probably have status with different airlines, so you'll be able to select your seats. But for someone like me that travels once or twice a year, I'd have no status. But with American, I'm going to get a free seat upgrade. So once I get my confirmation back from CTP, I can go out to American and log into my account, and I can upgrade my seat directly on American.com or on the American app. Okay. Then it tells me my total cost, and it asks me for a credit card. Okay, we recommend everybody use your travel card. That prevents you from having to pay out of pocket and then wait until your trip is over to get reimbursed. Okay, so if you've got a travel card, go ahead and use it. Then we click reserve flight and continue. And the next thing it's going to show us is our rental cars. And like I said, we list all of our contract vendors first and mark them as preferred. So that's Hertz, Enterprise, National, and Avis. The Avis contract is through the state. The Hertz, Enterprise, and National contracts are A&M contracts. Okay, so it lists out our estimated costs here. Okay, so if I want an intermediate car from National, I just choose that square, and then down here in the bottom, it gives me my total cost. Now let's talk a little bit about the total cost. So this confuses a lot of people. So national is basically telling the GDS, the inventory system, hey, an intermediate car for this time period normally costs this much. The GDS doesn't know that we're going to be giving national a sales tax exemption certificate. It doesn't know that this rate includes the insurance coverage. Okay, so what you see here is always going to be higher than what you actually pay. But there's simply no way for the vendors to report to the GDS that the actual cost is going to be, you know, $55. Okay, so just be sure you're aware of that when you're looking at this total cost. Any questions about that? That confuses a lot of people. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select it. Pick up and drop off times and locations. If I had, what did I pick, national here? Yeah, if I had a national program or an Emerald Club program loaded in here, it would have selected that for me. And just while we're on national, you get Emerald Club for free. That's one of the benefits of our contract. So if you need information on that, I can email that out to, you know, Drew or whoever there that can distribute it to you. So I'll click reserve car and continue. And next is going to be our hotels. Now we display the GSA rate for your location to you. If you're on a local account, the rate is really more of a guideline. It's not a hard limit. If you're on federal funds, there are some limits that you need to be aware of. Okay, so there's your lodging rate, and then there's your meals and incidentals rate. Okay, so we go ahead and show those to you, but then when I click next, we're not going to prevent you from booking something that's more expensive. Okay, so there's ways to deal with that on the back end. You know, if you go over your hotel rate, we can split the overage out and put it on a local account. You can, I don't know, there's probably some ways to request an exception on your grants. But there are ways to deal with that after the fact. So we're not going to prevent you from booking what you need to accomplish your business here. But I said I wanted to see Marriott's, and so it's just showing me Marriott's here, okay? So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to say View Rooms, and then this lists out all the rooms that are available. This one, this is the cheap room, but look, it requires an advance purchase. Okay, so you pay it in full in advance and it's non-refundable, okay? We typically discourage those, simply because when you check in here and you give them your tax exemption form, they're gonna say, well, you already paid for it, we can't refund it, okay? If there's a cost savings there, so here's a regular room, $169, you pay when you arrive, versus $144, so you're paying $25 less. If that tax is going to be less than $25 and it's going to result in a cost savings, then yeah, you might want to go ahead and do this one. But for the most part, we recommend people do not prepay their hotel, do the regular reservation, show up with your tax exemption form, and just pay when you check out, okay? So I'm going to choose that one. Check in, check out dates, address of the hotel. It would have pulled in my Marriott program if I'd loaded it into my profile. How do I want to secure that reservation? I'm going to use my travel card, and I'm going to go ahead and agree to the hotel's cancellation policy. And then I'm going to click Reserve Hotel and continue. Okay. Okay, so we've selected all three. We've got air, car, and hotel, but we're not done yet. Okay, there are confirmation screens that we have to go through. You need to keep going until it tells you you're finished. Okay, so this first screen, it tells you everything that you've selected. So there's my flight to Dallas, the car I'm going to pick up, the hotel I'm going to stay at, and then my flight home. So I'm going to click next. And this is where I'm going to give my trip a name. Okay, so in my list of trips, I want this to mean something to me. So I'm going to say Fort Worth Concur Conference. and then I'm gonna tell CTP, I have no unused tickets in my profile that I wanna apply to this trip. If I did, so let's say I went on a trip, or I booked a trip, ultimately canceled it, and I have a credit with the airline. I could tell CTP, yeah, I've got an unused ticket in my profile. I want y'all to use that credit to book this trip, and they'll do that for you. Then we click next, and this is our final screen. This is just telling us to complete the booking, press the purchase ticket. This gives us our CTP information, our confirmation numbers, trip name, everything on there. All we have to do is click purchase ticket. And it should come up here in a second and say we're finished. And we are. Okay, so this has now been sent to CTP. They are going to actually process the reservation, issue the ticket, and they're going to send you a confirmation email with everything on it. And then if you're using TripIt, which I highly recommend, all this is going to sync into TripIt, and you're going to get the TripIt notifications, GPS directions to your hotels, things like that. Okay. Any questions on booking the trip?
Asking you.
Okay. Well, I've got a pretty hard stop just
Kyle,
after 2. So, yeah, go ahead.
One quick note on the hotel, always, I'd like for at least my agents to always use government state rate for hotels, because it's usually $101. It's a standard rate. That was an option on that list, and that's the best rate.
Yeah, let's talk about that one a little bit. So when you see rates listed in the GDS, which is in Concur, that say government rate, they're talking about federal government, and they can ask for your federal government ID when you check in. I think when you're talking about state rate, you're referring to the GSA rates. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so lots of hotels will load those in. Lots of hotels will not. So if you see something that's more expensive than the GSA rate, sometimes it's worth a call to say, hey, I work for a state agency, I'm traveling, I want to stay at your hotel. Will you offer me the GSA rate? More times than not, they will do that for you.
If it's available. Okay, thank you. Just use that option if it's available. Thank you.
And also on hotels, you're never going to book conference hotels through Concur. Conferences, they reserve blocks of rooms, and they pull that inventory out of the GDS. So Concur can't even see it. So you're going to a conference, you're either going to register directly with that hotel using a particular code, or you're going to go through a third-party conference registration like Cvent or something like that. Okay.
So sorry, just
All right.
to clarify, if we book under a government rate then and are asked for ID, our university ID is valid for that?
Technically it's not, but is the hotel clerk at the front desk going to be aware of that? Usually not, and I've never once been asked for it. I just want to let you know that technically we are not eligible for federal government contract rates. Okay?
Okay, even though we're federally funded.
Right, but you're not a federal employee.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Just
that's
wanted to
different.
clarify.
Okay. All right, so we want to go ahead and move into the expense report because I'm going to have a hard stop here in about 10 minutes. So since we've done a request, that's where we want to create our expense report from. So I'm going to go look at our request, and here's our 1211 demo. Okay, over here on the right, we have a column labeled action, and I'm going to click on expense. And what that's going to do is pull all the information that I put on my request and drop it into an expense report. Okay. The only additional thing I might have to put in here is my meal rate, which was $71 for Fort Worth. Now this account, we did not have an account on our request header but I put a default account in my profile because I travel on the same account every single time I go on a trip. If you don't have a default account in your profile, you're going to need to select an account here, okay? I'm not going to go through the whole process, but basically these fields filter each other. So I selected O2 here. This is only going to show me O2 departments. And then once I've selected an account once, it saves it up here in the top of my list in this bold black font. So if I need to change it, all I have to do is click there and it's going to change all my fields for me. Okay, so if you use a series of accounts, all you have to do is select them once and then Concur is going to save it for you so you've got one-click access to it.
Kyle,
Okay? Yes.
on the account attributes, it says local. That's why I was choosing local instead of federal.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say. It really depends on how your accounts get classified. Once the funds are received, you know, A&M holds the money in different accounts, and some of them are designated as local, some are designated as federal. This is what we go by. So if we see federal, we're auditing it as a federal account. If we see local, we audit it as a local account. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then this is where we start adding our expenses. Okay, so I was using my travel card and I was using Concur Mobile to capture receipt images. So let's import some expenses. I'm going to grab this one, drag it on. Oh, now it's going to go slow. All right, let me grab some more. I'll do multiple. So there's the Spring Hill that we selected. Do I have an airfare on here? There's a car rental. Let me see if I can find an airfare real quick. Okay. Would really like one with an ear seat. There we go. All right, so I checked 3 expenses. I'm going to drag those onto my report. And let me look for one more. It was a hotel that I wanted to show. Yeah. All right. So these are all my expenses that came in from either the travel card or from the mobile app while I was on the trip. And once this comes over, so you see I took a picture of this hotel receipt. All right. I used Concur Mobile to take that picture. This is what Concur did for me, okay? It broke it out into my room rate and room tax by night, so I didn't have to do that manually. So if y'all are creating your own reports, everyone knows that it's a pain to itemize your hotel receipts, especially when the rate changes during the course of your stay. So if you'll use Concur Mobile and take a picture of it, it's going to do all that for you, okay? Same thing with this meal. All I did was take a picture of the receipt and Concur created the expense for me. And all I had to do was say, hey, Concur, this expense belongs on this report. Let's move it over. Now this one, okay, so it's missing comments. Okay, so on the parking, y'all are probably wondering, well, why does parking always require a comment? That's a state requirement. The state wants to know the business purpose of the parking. Well, you would think at hotel parking is obvious, but they still want it. So for every single one of these parkings, I'd come in here and say parking overnight at hotel, and that satisfies the state's reporting requirement, okay? So since we're limited on time, what specific questions can I hit on expense reports for y'all? If you're using the tools that are available, it really makes it fairly simple.
I have a question. Is there a way to add an approver like we do with requests? Is that necessary?
Yep, so under the details tab, you've got approval flow, and you can go and you have those same buttons that you had on request.
Question. This is Kimber. I had a problem that came up recently with a hotel where they would charge for the full amount plus, I forget what it's called, the deposit, and then they'd retract the deposit and then it would log as a completely separate expense for the same hotel to add the difference in for the total amount. And I was having issues trying to itemize that because it didn't fit the itemizations when they were both
Right.
hotel expenses. So how would I go about adding the correct itemizations in?
Did they do the deposit as a separate charge?
Yes, it was a separate charge.
Okay, so you would want to, let's just do this as an example. Within this expense, you would want to add an itemization. Okay, so click add itemization, call it a hotel, and you're going to put like negative $125 or whatever it was. And you're going to say this was hotel deposit applied to stay. And that tells us, hey, they just reduced her stay by the amount of her deposit. But that allows you to get your itemization correct. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. What else? Let's talk about receipts real quick. So the easiest way to get receipts is to use Concur Mobile. If you don't use Concur Mobile, you have two options. You can go into every single expense and click attach receipt and attach a receipt image. Okay, that's one way to do it. The other option is to scan all your receipts as one PDF and click receipts, attach receipt images, browse to your file location and upload it. Okay, that's the easiest way if you're not using the tool. Okay, we don't like to see it. It makes it harder to review and harder to audit, but it is a convenience thing. But if you use the tool, as you incur an expense and you're handed that receipt, you just open your phone, tap the camera, take a picture, and you're done. And then everything's done for you. The receipt is attached to the right line item. It matches up to your credit card, and all the work is done pretty much for you. Okay, so that's really the preference, but there are two ways to do it. Okay, what other questions can I ask for you before I go? Anybody?
I don't have a question, but I do want to clarify that because most of these expense reports are allocated to grant accounts, we do require meal receipts, even though the university doesn't require that, our department does.
Okay, y'all require meal receipts for everything, even if it's under GSA?
Yes.
Okay. All right, okay, one more thing before I leave. We got the home page. There's some links out here that you might need to be looking at. The State Department travel warnings. This is System Risk Management's travel warning countries. Here's a link to our travel policy, but just like she just said, A&M as a general rule doesn't require meal receipts if you're under GSA, but y'all do. Okay, so your department can have some separate requirements that the university doesn't require. So be sure you're aware of those. Also on the home page, you have a help tab. And if you'll click training, you've got your forms out here for your tax exemptions. So your car rental tax, sales tax, and hotel occupancy tax. You've also got a training tab with a bunch of short little videos. It's a computerized voice. I realize they're boring, but they are short and they do get the point across on how to do certain things within the system, okay? So this is always out there. But like I said at the very beginning, if you need help and you find yourself getting frustrated, please, please, please call us. That's what we're here for. We want to make your job easier. We realize that you are not here to do expense reports, and doing expense reports should be as painless for you as possible. So please let us help you.